Repairing the CB antenna coaxial cable in the car. Hi guys. So, as you'll probably know from one of my shorts, the CB coax in my car is damaged and is not making a connection to the radio. Now, I think I know why this has happened. Last week when I went to Devon, my passenger somehow, I don't know how, managed to trip over the coax that runs past the passenger door. I've got a longer coax just in case that was part of the problem as well, to run between the antenna coax and the radio. I've got one of these angle connectors as well, because this would make more sense to have on the back of the radio. And I've also got two of these. These are crimp-on PL259 plugs. I have a preference for those because the failure rate I've had with those, apart from this one, has been otherwise zero. I've never had a failed plug with the crimp-on type. The solder types sometimes fail, and they're actually more hassle to fit than it's actually worth, which is why I prefer the crimp-on types, because I actually do have the tool to put these on, and I used to buy bags of them from China. I'm not sure if I can still get those, but it turns out I can get the single plugs on their own, like this, from Moonraker in the United Kingdom, which is actually pretty good. Like I say, I have the tool, and I got that from Maplin, but I had to buy a new die for it from China. I think it was for the bigger types that are used on the RG213, I think. Might have been. So, the die that's in it now is for these plugs, as far as I'm aware. I can double check that. And it'll also allow me to swap the plug over in situ in the car, because I've got to cut the old one off past the brake and obviously strip the coax back. So I'm going to go down to the car and I'm going to get that done. I'm also going to put this piece in. This is the angled piece. And this cable in to where it all currently is at the moment. So hopefully that'll get that working. So I'll catch you down in the car. So I'm down in the car now, and we've got the radio here. As you can see, there's no reading on the S meter at all. And because I'm near the house, or the flats rather, there should be some kind of reading on that S meter showing a little bit of the local noise. I have noticed also that there's been absolutely no sound of interference from the fast DC charger in the local Tesco's car park, because the antenna is obviously reading as disconnected, so it's obviously not connected, so therefore there is a fault and it needs to be repaired. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the antenna from the back of this radio. Now, to do that is quite difficult because there's not a lot of room round here, hence why I need the angle connector rather than using the cable as it is. So if I disconnect this now, that's now disconnected completely. The car's just locked itself, but it does that. So that's now disconnected. So what I need to do now is put that angle adapter in, which is actually in my other hand. So I'll pause the video while I put that in. Right, so I've got the right angled adapter connected and the new cables connected to that. Now, because of the space behind the Thunderpole T3000, there actually isn't a lot because of the heatsink and the mounting lugs. The cable is coming in from the top down rather than from the side, which I would have preferred. But that's fine, that's not going to affect performance in any way. It shouldn't be too much of an issue, and the next job is to sort out what I believe to be the damaged plug on the piece of coax that goes between the antenna and in here. So I will dig that out and we'll get started. Okay, so what we've got here is the point where the two cables connect using the coupler. It's this side here where my thumb is that I believe that's broken. The other bit I believe to be fine. But I'm going to test it anyway when I get back in the house, because I do have a means to do that, which I don't have down here obviously. So going to unscrew this side here, and we're going to chop that plug off and then I'm going to put a new plug on. I'm going to crimp it on because I can't solder down here because I don't have a gas soldering iron, nor do I have a 12-volt one. So I'm going to just pause the video while I disconnect that because I have my hands quite full here. Okay, so that's the plug off. Now I'm going to show you something here. Now if you look here, this is where the coax was covered by this heat shrink, and that looks as though it's actually pulled back, and therefore it's pulled, the plug has been pulled. In fact, I'm actually able to move that no problem at all. So that has failed. So that's failed because my passenger tripped over it, over the cable. So, and I really don't know how they managed to do that. So I'm going to lock that off and I'm going to stick a new one on. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is cut it off past the brake. Now I'm using a pair of quite big side cutters for this. They are not the sharpest because it's taking a while for them to go through. And the reason that they're not the sharpest is because I use them to cut antennas down to size, so that's not ideal. So I've snipped that off now. So what I'll next need to do is I'll need to strip that back sufficiently so that the plug fits. But before I do that, there's a couple of things else I need to do. And that means I've got to get this plug out of here. So first things first, the most important bit, see if that fits on the, will that fit on the coax? It's a bit of a tight fit, but it will go on. Probably because I've cut it with side cutters. It's not helpful. Probably not in shot, so I really need to show you that. There we go. That actually does go on. It's a bit snug, but it will go on. Now that goes over this part of the plug here, which is where the braid would be, and that would crimp down the braid, which is the idea. So what I also need to do, otherwise I'll have to cut it off and put another one on, is remember to put that on there as well. So two important things you must not forget: put that on and put that on. If you're just using the solder types, it's just that there. So I'm going to check the size of the actual crimp against the plug that I put on originally, which is a different type, but otherwise it's fundamentally the same. So I'm going to check that. That's just off camera at the moment, because that's where I've got the crimping tool, so I know which size crimping tool I need to use in order to crimp that. So I do have the crimping tool in my pocket, so I need to find out which size hole is the right size, because obviously it's not going to crimp anything because there's nothing for it to crimp. And it would appear that it is, on this one, 0.213. I'll check it in the 256. Bear in mind this is an assembled plug. Yeah, the 256 fits as well, but I think it might actually be the 213. But without removing the heat shrink and checking the size, that's going to prove quite difficult. But I can do that anyway, because, yeah, I can actually see the strands of the outer have actually been ripped off. So that's a failed plug. So I'm going to try that again by finding out which size was actually used here, because it's been a while, I can't remember. So I'm going to do that now off camera, and then I'll make sure I crimp it properly. So the 0.256 feels a bit loose on that, so I think it is actually the 0.213, but we'll check. Yeah, it feels like it might actually be the 213, 0.213. It's none of the other sizes on this die, so we'll use 0.213. That should make a secure, snug fit. So I need to strip that wire back, so I'll pause the video whilst I do that. Okay, so that's the cable stripped and the plug body fitted. I didn't show that on the video. You got to strip quite a lot of the inner conductor insulation off, the inner dielectric off, to be able to get a decent amount so that this is flush up here. Because what this has to do is not only crimp onto the braid, it has to crimp onto the jacket as well. So the next thing to do is actually crimp that. And I'll show you the results of that in a moment. But I'll show you what you got to do. So this little sleeve here, I mean, heat shrink's another option. I used that on the last one, but I'm not going to use it on this one. You slide this over the braid at the bottom here. It's supposed to cover all the braid. It might not. In this case, it hasn't. I think there's too much braid there. Well, that's supposed to go over the braid, like so, and then you crimp it down with the tool. So I might have to dress this a little, because it looks like there might be too much braid here. I don't know. It's going over, so that's fine. So I'll get that sorted out and I'll get that crimped, and I'll show you the next bit in a moment. Okay, so that is now crimped on using position on my crimping tool 0.213. This is a hex crimping tool. I'll show you the tool actually. Here we go. This is the tool I'm using. I got this from Maplin some years ago. The dies, you can buy replacements of these dies from China that will fit these tools, which is what I had to do for, I believe it might have been for the RG213 that I sometimes use, but because this is RG58, that die is perfectly acceptable. So there's a couple of last jobs to do. Firstly, I'm going to put the collet thing back on. There you go. That's now back on, the little thing. The bit that everybody forgets and then have to start all over again. I didn't, because I know full well if you do that, you get it wrong. That'll need trimming flush, but that can also be crimped. Now, I've never done this before, so I believe that's it's either that size or that size I use. I believe it'll be that size. It doesn't feel right, so I think it's the next size. So I'll just click the thing out and try on the next size. No, it was that size. I was right the first time. Okay, so that's now crimped there. So that is a completely crimped plug. I'm going to trim that back. I've only got side cutters, which is a bit annoying. Before I tidy up all the cable, the next thing to do is break out the SWR meter. Oh, can't get that shut. And here is the SWR meter, handily kept in my glove box. So I'm going to plug that into there. Right, so that's now plugged into the back of the SWR meter. The cable from the radio is that one. And the radio's starting to make noises, which is promising. It doesn't mean anything though. So that's now all connected up, because this will reveal if there's any problems with the antenna. So I'm going to have to prop this up with something so you can see it. There we go. So, yeah. I'm getting noises out the radio, buzzy, buzzy, buzz, buzz, buzz noises. See if I can prop this SWR meter up so you can actually see it. Okay, so far so good. I'm not sure if you can actually see the SWR meter. Let's keep propping it up on things. Right, I can see it through the camera, so you guys should be able to see it. So we're going to go to channel 20 UK, because that way the burner brigade won't get annoyed with me for doing this. Now, the car's off, but that's fine. It's still... Okay, let's see. Okay, so it is doing something. Let's put it onto forward. Let's turn that knob up to the set position. Flick it back down. Looks like it's fluctuating a little because I think the antenna's blowing around in the wind because it's a bit windy. Or it was windy. But it's showing 1.5 to 1. I'm just checking that isn't a hot cable. It doesn't feel like the cable's hot. Okay, I'll come off the transmitter now. So 1.5 to 1 on UK channel 20. So let's do that again, because the Thunderfold T3000's quite... I'm hearing some SSB traffic there, so I'm not too bothered about keying over that. So let's bring it back. So EU channel 20 is showing pretty much perfect. I have to say, there is a car next to me, an SUV thing. Yeah, that's definitely SSB coming in, so I think there's a lift on. Yeah, I think there's a lift on, because that was SSB. So, let's try the extremities. That's always a good place to try. So, channel 40 UK. So, I'm back in the UK band now. So, channel 40 UK. It's usually a little higher there, so let's do that again this time with the... Yeah, so it's about 1.7. It's fluctuating a little. Let's double check that is not a hot cable. No, it's not a hot cable. The choke's doing its job. So at 1.7 to 1 at UK channel 40, so that's okay. EU channel 1, which we'll go for. Let's try and press the right button here. There must be a lift on because I'm getting a lot of noise, including SSB. It's November, so I'm actually quite surprised about that. Okay. It's SSB, I'm not too bothered about keying over it. I can't... Have I put that into power mode? Yes, I have. There we go. Try that. Reading about perfect there. I'll just double check 40 UK just to make sure that it's probably too much power. Right, okay, so let's try channel 40 UK again. Make sure I'm actually on the right settings. Well, 1.7, 1.8 to 1. Fluctuating a little. Don't think anything to do with a hot cable. Oh, it might be though. There is a choke on that, so the choke is working though. Actually, no, that's just my imagination. It's just coincidental timing on me putting that there. So that's okay. So that's working fine. That's no longer being an absolute pain in the rear. I suppose it's only obligatory that I do one more thing. One 9 for a rig check. 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 No, never going to happen, was it? No, never mind. So, there's only one job left for me to do, and that is reroute the coax. So, I'm going to pause the video while I do that, because that's going to take a little bit of time. Right, so, it is now repaired and working. So, the coax runs from the radio, down the side the passenger door, between the door and the dashboard, along the floor, all the way through to the back, into the boot, and it connects to the antenna in the boot. And the reason why I've done that is because that cable's about 5 metres long. So it is a bit on the long side. I specified an extra long cable just to allow for any excess I might need. 5 metres is, in my opinion, extra long. So now the radio is working, it's receiving, it's transmitting, we've checked that, and, well... Looks like we've got a lift on.
Aquí de Sevilla en una furgoneta, voy a ver la fruta que tiene por ahí, ahora vengo. Vale, Antonio, lava bien la fruta, esa fruta seguramente
sea... Okay, enough of that. So that would have been good yesterday if the parts arrived yesterday in time for me to do the anniversary on UK Legal CB. But as I had to go to the radio club and I've kind of got a committee promotion. So, you know, I've kind of an important position on the Amateur Radio Club committee as a result of that meeting, you know. So I couldn't take part in the CB anniversary, so because obviously club matters come first, and, you know, I've now got extra responsibilities with regards to Radio Club. So that's all working. That'll probably work for 10 metres as well if I was to change the antenna over for a 10 metre antenna. I'm not sure whether it will work on any of the bands with the tuner, but you never know. So it's all connected up. It's all working. I'm happy with that. The proof will be in the driving around because the antenna is obviously up on the roof right now. And it survived the journey to and from Torquay, no problem at all, even though I did have an altercation in the multi-storey car park whilst I was in Torquay. Yeah, but, you know, the antenna survived to live another day. So, if you're actually on the CB... Oh. So, anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted... Turn that down a bit. So, before I was so rudely interrupted by whatever that was, yeah, so... If you do have a CB in your car or you have one in the house, when I'm driving around, I'm usually monitoring channel 19, but it's usually just full of people that are just using too much power swearing and not actually using it for its intended purpose. So, yeah, call me the Red Squirrel on there, as you know. Or if I'm doing DX on CEPT, then, yeah, you could call me using the call sign 26 Charlie Tango 730. That's me. 26 Charlie Tango 730. That's... I use on CEPT when I'm doing DX, which isn't very often from the car. I need to get my President Grant 2 back working for that anyway, because it's currently being serviced. So, you can catch me on PMR 446 as well, using either Red Squirrel or 26 Charlie Tango 730, whichever you want. Doesn't bother me. I'll answer to both on PMR 446. And, you know, my amateur radio call sign, Mike Zero Whiskey November uniform. And I'm often monitoring local repeaters in my area, GB3IR. That's currently, at the moment, at time of filming, connected to IRLP and Echolink. So you can call me using IRLP or Echolink. Can't remember the node numbers off the top of my head. I'll pop them in the video if you're so interested. So, when I'm driving around, usually listening to that repeater. Otherwise, if I'm not on IR, try GB3HG. That's a standalone repeater, which covers up here down to York, those sorts of areas. I've heard it as far away as Pickering, I believe. So, yeah, you could probably get me on there. And if I'm in your local area, chances are I'm monitoring your local repeater. So, if I do put a call out on your local repeater, say hello. So, yeah. It's all working. A bit late for the anniversary of Legal CB, but hopefully it won't break for next year. For the 42nd anniversary, which I should hopefully be taking part in. And if Del Boy still does them, the big multi-mode nets, when I can get my President Grant 2 working, that's currently in bits, waiting for me to actually finish getting it done when I have the time, which I should do now because of my current job, which is, delivering through Uber Eats. So, there you go. All done. Satisfied. It's working. I'm not sure what was coming in.
Good afternoon, my... You'll make the trip to Torrevieja in southeast Spain, and the first name here is John, Juliet Oscar Hotel, November. Over.
Spain, not bad. There's definitely a bird opening on 11 metres CB. So if that's the case, there will be one on 10 metres as well. I just don't have the 10 metre radio down here with me at the moment. So, step 3 for now, and I'll catch you in the next video.